Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all... How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Everything is good over here. As you can tell by my outfit, it's hot, really hot. Hot. Let's put it this way. Usually my dogs, my little pack of dogs that bust out the front door because they want to go out and run around, they go out and they look at me and they come right back in, especially if it's in the middle of the day. And usually I have to be like, come inside. And they're like, nah, they're not having none of it either. So yeah, even though it's May, I'm thinking, man, I hope this doesn't mean a hotter summer because it's really been hot. It's really been hot out here. And I have to remind myself that it's like, technically we're in springtime. So I don't know what's up with that. Anyway, I want to show you guys. Let me see if I can get it up here. This is a pursuant to my pigeon thing. It's like, I'm telling you, I'm like a kid, with this thing with let me see if I can, with this thing with the pigeon stuff. Hold on. Let me see if I can show you something. And, let's see, share screen. Let me see if I can get this picture. I want to show you what this is. Let's see, here we go. You know what this is? This is my first egg. That's my first pigeon egg. Okay. Oh. And I've got Barb. That's my guest. I brought her in. But yes, and I'm all excited because obviously I haven't put her in with a male, so technically it's not a fertilized egg. So I took it away, but I was all excited. As a matter of fact, after I got that egg last week, I've put the two pairs together because I think that's my sign that they want to start nesting. So yes, for those of you who, what I was doing with the pigeons, it's going in the right directions. How's that? It's going in the right directions. So let me get to the good part. Let me tell you about the guest today, and her name is Barbara DeLong, and she's been described as a free spirit, and she considers herself different, eclectic, unusual, and sometimes strange, and still be considered normal within today's society. She has learned through her life experience that the universe has a plan for all of us, and it's easier if we choose to flow with that in everyday life. She, like others, has at times been resistant to this change. She says that if in the late 1980s she would be told she would be an ordained minister, a spiritual empath, lecturer, artist, and podcaster, she would have thought this person needed a shrink. She believes that we should reach for a connection to our true selves and our place in this amazing universe. Help me welcome her. How are you doing, Barbara?
Oh, you're going to be a grandmother or almost?
Oh, I tell you something. I've been a grandmother I have so many animals. I've been a grandmother. I'm like way into the but yeah, with my pigeons, yes.
Oh,
yes, because these are like racing pigeons, and I got them all special. I ordered them and they got flown in, and as a matter of fact, one of my females, I put her thinking it was a her with a male. He almost killed my male. I was like, holy. And I sent away with, for DNA testing on one of the feathers, and the she turned out to be a he. So,
oh my.
Yeah. So now, but yeah, that's one of those things that, because unfortunately, some birds are real easy to sex them just by looking at them. But pigeons, for somebody like myself who's inexperienced, I know there's people that say, oh, you do this and you touch them here. And, I don't know how that experience. So that's why I fell back on the DNA. So yeah, as a matter of fact, but yeah,
it's squared away. But yes, I'm like, so I will be posting pictures in the future of whenever they get any chicks. And as a matter of fact, today I put in a nest, and yeah, the males are doing that cooing, that low cooing that they get. So that's yeah. So I'm telling you, it's better than TV. You go out there and you're like, what are you guys? And it's just like, Mom, well, this lady doesn't stare at us. But yes, it's like, but anyway, let me ask you why considering if somebody would have told you, like you said in your bio, Barbara, that in the 1980s you'd be doing what you're doing now, why would you have thought they were crazy?
Because I was brought up that you went to school, went to college, got married, had children, and then died.
Yeah.
And I'm 80 years old, so I go way back. And when um, when I started to realize that there was so much more to life
Yes.
than what everybody was telling you. I saw a UFO when I was in college. It landed on my
Wow.
campus, and when it
Okay.
took off, it just swooped over my dorm and uh, blanked out the sky. And I looked up there and I said, "Yeah, there's got to be more to this life than what I've been told."
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, how many people was it, like in the middle of the day, or when did this happen?
It was at night,
It was at night. Okay.
and so the girls were in the dorms after 11 o'clock. They locked our dorms, like we couldn't get into trouble before 11 o'clock.
Right. Yeah, I just
Um,
imagine.
so we were locked in, and it was before everybody had iPhones or cell phones or
Sure.
TVs in the room or anything like that. And God, it sounds like ancient history now, but
Yeah.
we were listening to the radio, and there was a news announcement that a UFO had been spotted over Eastern Michigan University, which was where I was. So everybody, of course, rushed to the windows, and we heard police sirens, and police cars came streaming from everywhere, and we could hear it was in May, so we had windows open so you could hear their radios talking to each other. And the radio said, we're going to turn on the stadium lights to see, it seems to have landed there. And of course, the best way to sneak up on a UFO is to have sirens screaming and
I
lights through
bet.
the. I mean, it was ridiculous. So anyhow, we saw the lights go on, and there was a building between my dorm and the field where it landed. And when the lights went on, it rose up and it swooped over my dorm. And it was fascinating. Now looking back at it, um, I was standing there with my mouth hanging open.
I
Uh,
bet.
but but there were others that were screaming, that were running, that were hiding in closets, that were,
Oh
just
yeah.
just. I
End
mean,
of the world kind of stuff.
yeah, end of the world, and sort of like the War of the Worlds,
Yeah. Uh huh.
um,
Yes.
and 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 the girl standing next to me didn't see it.
Really.
There were people that stood there with me and did not see it. There were people that were terrified. I don't know anybody else that actually really saw it. I mean, some of the people that were frightened saw it, but
Sure.
all these years later, that was where I think I started my journey. I kind of, not exactly, but sort of like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind at the very end, where they shove the hero onto the line of people that are going into the spaceship, and they're saying, "Well, he wasn't trained," and the comment back was, "But he was invited."
Right.
And in many ways, that was my invitation to look beyond, go beyond. Now,
Yeah.
I graduated, I got married, I had a baby, and that's about where that story ends, because that didn't last long. I moved home with my mother. I began a spiritual investigation, looking at things.
Yeah.
Always been sensitive, so I looked at extending that and seeing how I could make it work for me in a deeper level, not looking outside of me, but looking inside of me. And
Right.
many years after that, I joined you know how high schools have those adult education things that you can go to?
Yes.
There was one that was to tune into your psychic abilities.
I
And
remember those. Yes.
I was married at that time to a sea captain who was gone 6 months of the year, so I did a lot of that stuff on top of teaching full time.
Okay.
And, at the end of the session, they did he pulled all the classes together and had a spiritual minister come in and do platform mediumship.
Okay.
And my mother went with me because my husband was somewhere at sea. And, at the end of the presentation, I said to her, if I could do what he did, if I could touch people's lives the way he touched the lives of the people that he spoke to, I would think I had done something special. And, so I looked him up, and he ran a spiritual development class in his, the spiritual church that was kind of local, and I called up and it was full. And so I said, "Well, put me on the waiting list." And, they did, and they said that you won't get a call. And, there are too many people waiting to get in. And I said, "That's okay, just put me on the waiting list." And we had power outage like crazy because of a storm. And so I don't know, I think my son and I were doing a jigsaw puzzle or something. And the phone rang, and the phones hadn't been working. So I picked it up and I, said hello. And it was the church. They said they had an opening. I said, "Fine, I'll be there." And I hung the phone up. And then I picked the phone up to call my mother and tell her that I had power, and the power was still out.
That's great. What a great story that is. That's
Oh,
like that was meant to be. Talk about things
oh yeah.
like
And I studied with him for 7 years.
okay.
There were a number of times where the class did something in the church, and, the congregation came just to see us be silly. And, every time he would say to me, because I thought the first time that he was letting me off the hook because I was a newbie, and as I was leaving, because he gave everybody a part of the service, and I thought, "Oh, this is great. I'm gonna come and just laugh at everybody." And he said, "Oh, Barbara." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, um, "You're gonna do the platform mediumship." And at the end of every class, we sat in darkness and people gave messages to each other.
Is this like what was it, a spiritualist church then? What he
Yeah,
was doing? Okay.
yeah. And I got tired of sitting in the dark, so I started making stuff up. And, and,
Ah.
I said to him, I waited for everybody to leave, and I said, "You do know I'm faking, don't you?" And he said, "No, you're actually a natural, and you're the first I've seen." And
Oh my.
I said, "No, no, I'm faking. I'm faking this." And he said, "Well, then you shouldn't have any trouble." I said, "In front of 3 or 400 people." "Right." And he said, "Sure, you'll be just fine." And he said, "If you're not, have some friends come and just give your friends messages." And I said, "I could do that." So I had 5 friends. I gave each of them $20, and I said, "Come to the evening so that
And
I have
save
some."
me.
Yes, and then we'll all go and have drinks.
Uh-huh.
And, so I sat there fully confident, feeling a bit cocky, and it came to be at the end of the service when the platform was done. He opened the platform for me, and I got up there and stood. Not one of those damn people were there.
Oh, you're kidding.
Not a single one. They all started drinking before me. And so I, looked around and I looked at him, and he just went, "Yeah, go ahead." And so I picked on strangers, and for 30 minutes, I gave messages to people. And then I sat down and I leaned over to the minister, said, "I hope you're happy." He said, "You were dead on." And everybody came up and said, "You're fabulous. Do you do readings?" And I said, "No, I don't do readings. I just, I'm studying." And so it took him 7 years, and he finally convinced me that what I was doing was tapping in some place that
Wow.
was bringing good information forward. And after 7 years, I kind of went on my way doing other things, and in the spiritual field, of course. And many years later, many, many years later, um, both he and his wife had passed away, and the church needed people to come in and be rotating ministers. And they called me to be one of the rotating ministers. I was ordained.
Okay.
I'm non-denominational, but I was ordained. And I was the very first one to get behind the pulpit. And then, I said, they say you can never come home. Surprise.
Uh,
Um, and
there
I
you
said,
go.
I don't fit in their shoes, but I'd like to stand next to them. And so for 5 years, I was one of their rotating ministers. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I kept forgetting to take collections, which was probably not a good thing, um, but it was a great experience to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't want to do it full time, but
Okay.
it was something that gave me great validity and made me very humble because standing behind that pulpit is not as easy as it looks.
I bet.
And
I
the very
bet.
first time I did it, I was prepared. I was over prepared. I'm a school teacher here, 2 master's degrees. I was prepared. I put the entire congregation, the organist and myself to sleep. Literally, the organist dozed off and fell onto the keyboard and woke us all up. And I was sure I would never be asked back. And they did, which shows they were desperate. Um,
Yeah.
but the next time I got up and I said, I am not worthy of doing a sermon, but I am very worthy of sharing with you some mistakes that I've made on a spiritual level. And if I share my mistake with you, you'll have to find another mistake to make because you'll avoid this one. So they knew that every Sunday that I did, I was going to show them how I had really screwed up, knowing what the message was and screwing up anyhow. And I found that, and I learned really quickly that if you can get them to laugh, they will remember what you've told them.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Humor. Humor does
and
it.
and didn't ever want to be a stand-up comic, but did find that it came in handy.
Sure. You
And
became a stand-up comic on the pulpit.
I did. And from there, I did all sorts of, I did psychic fairs and I did conventions and I designed the cosmic deck of initiation. And then that came from a homework assignment from the spiritual development class.
Okay.
He explained to us what mandalas were and assigned us a class member to do a mandala for and a reading with it. And so I did one, and everybody loved what I did. And before I knew it, I had orders, and I was doing them for free. And finally, I said, I have to be able to pay for my paint, so we're going to have to charge.
Sure.
And as of today, well,
Uh-huh.
as of today, there are over 500 personal mandalas out there around the world.
Wow.
And once I got the idea that they would make a wonderful deck of cards, I stopped painting personal
Okay.
mandalas, did the cards, and I haven't painted since. But the cards have
So
been
you
out
did
there.
basically you designed the whole card with
I, well,
different
I decided, and this looking back on it, sometimes wonder about myself. But when I was doing psychic fairs, I was doing psychic art and I was doing gem casting. I did a whole bunch of different things.
mm-hmm.
And after psychic fairs, we would all get together and have a spaghetti dinner and drink wine. And
Right.
after my second glass of wine, I decided that tarot cards, and at the time, all the cards that were out there was the Aquarian deck and the Rider Waite deck.
Yes.
And I just said, I find them depressing and negative. And if
Okay.
anybody has just a little bit of knowledge, they're terrified. And if the death card falls and it's upside down, forget it. You're not going to hear anything
You're
you
done
say.
for.
Yeah, you're going to die. And
Yes.
so I said, I could design a deck of cards that would be positive,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually insightful, a
Yes.
learning experience, never give a bad anything, and and it would be a joy to work with. And they finally, I said it too many times actually. They had what they said that was well, they got together and they looked at me and they said, either do it or shut up.
Okay.
So 9 months later, I put the deck on the table. It was mocked up and there were 52 cards
Okay.
and all different designs. And I said, go for it. find something negative. I dare you to find something negative. And most of them were sensitive, but they
Mm-hmm.
were relying upon other stuff so that, they threw them out and they did little arrangements. And I showed them what I used as far as a layout. And I said, go to it. An hour later, they gave me a bottle of wine and said, okay, we can't make it be negative.
Right.
And so I designed the deck just to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine owned a restaurant, and somebody was in there, and she mentioned the deck to them, and they said, I'd like to see it. And she called me up and said, come for a free dinner and do a reading for this lady. And I did. And she worked for US Games. And
Oh,
yeah, and the next thing I knew, Stuart Kaplan was buying the deck and publishing it.
there you go. Talk
Didn't
about
look for anybody to publish it.
synchronicity and things, huh?
Yeah, I have a lot of that.
You know what? There's people that they maneuver trying to do exactly what just happens that falls on your lap.
Well, my best synchronicity story is always been an Eastern person, Northeastern, always. And my son lives in Nashville with his wife and his two children. And I finally decided if I wanted to ever see them, I'd have to move here. So I did.
Okay.
And he said, you're a Northerner and you're a psychic. They'll probably burn you at the stake. And I said, I don't think so because I'm a minister and they hear minister and, I can walk on water, especially if
Right.
it's frozen.
Yeah.
And so I moved down here and my house didn't sell for a year and a half. And so I spent a year and a half looking at everything available here in the area. And the day that somebody put a bid on my house, I found the condo that I'm living in. And I called my son and I said, this is it. And he said, well, do you want to come out and look at it? And I said, nope, this is it, buy it. And this is what I said,
Oh, because you were looking at it on the internet.
yeah, I saw it on the internet. And
Okay.
I told him exactly. I said, offer them this and tell them it's cash. And he said, Mom, you're supposed to negotiate. This is a game everybody plays. I said, I don't. That's my condo. And I said, just tell him it's cash and tell him exactly what I offer. And he called me back. He said, they took it. And so, long story short, I came out here. He came east. He drove me and my two cats here. And it's a great condo. It's 3,000 square feet. It's big as a
That's
house.
huge. Yes.
And it's got a little bit of garden and everything. And so after I moved in, I was walking around to see what everybody did with their little garden plots and everything. And I discovered first, there's a graveyard right in my backyard.
Oh, you're kidding
It's
me.
so cool.
But
And
what is it, like a family little graveyard that they forgot about or what?
it's one of the old ones. It's registered.
Oh, it is.
It's the Smiley family cemetery. And there's also the one thing that I wanted badly was to be near water. And of course, there's not that kind of water. I was on Long Island Sound, but there's a stream that runs
Okay.
right behind me that I
All
didn't
right.
even know was there. And when I was looking at the cemetery, there was only one tombstone that it's so old you can't read the tombstones, but there was
Okay.
one that I read and I got his birth date and his death date, and it was Thomas F. Smiley. And a friend of mine and I do genealogy when we're really
Mm-hmm.
bored. And so she looked at it and she said, you're not going to believe this. And I said, okay. So Thomas Smiley from early 1800s had a sister named Hattie. Hattie was married to Aaron DeLong, who is a relative of mine.
What are the chances on that? That's
Well,
incredible. That
yeah,
is incredible. You move to another state and you end up with a family graveyard to family like a
family.
wow. Family, exactly.
Yeah. No, I have synchronicities happening all the time, and it's kind of fun. I wanted to republish the cards when US Games stopped publishing them.
Uh-huh.
And I looked around and it was way too expensive. So I just said, okay. So they were out for 30 years and you could find them a long time ago on the internet. But now if you want to buy a deck, it's over $100 usually.
Okay, because it's
And
like like it's almost out of print, is what you're saying, like the same
it's
as a
out of
book.
print.
Right. Okay.
But we had a guest on the show, and I was talking to him, and I mentioned that I had the cards, that I wanted to reprint them, but it was too expensive. And he said, "Barb, I'm a publisher. I'll publish them for free."
Wow.
Um, so he published them, and as he was getting ready to put it all the way together, he said, "There should be a handbook." And I said, "Yeah, there should be. I never wrote it. I wrote it, and then they wanted me to rewrite it, and I became a princess and said no." And he said, "Well, you have to write the handbook." And so I sat down, I wrote the handbook. It went about 400 pages.
That
And
you what, a 400-page handbook?
handbook.
What? Alrighty then. That's some handbook.
It goes into a lot of detail on the cards, and how to use them and how to apply them, and when
Okay.
I talk about something that I think people don't know about, I explain it, like the different chakras and the aura colors and the different
Mm-hmm.
layers of the body energetics and solfeggio music, and so a lot of that information is in the book as well. And
Wow.
so we published the book, and then I have a tech that works with me. He does a lot of the techie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said to him, I thought it would be fun to do an app for the deck. And he said, well, it could cost between, maybe ten and $15,000. And I said, well, when pigs fly, we'll talk again on this particular topic. So 3 months ago, I had a guest that we had to do her show at another time, but we had the time free, so we just chatted. And I mentioned that I had thought an app would be a lot of fun to do, but I couldn't afford it. And she said, "Well, go to Deckable. It's free." And I went to Deckable, and I sent my tech to Deckable, and the deck should be out as an app within the next month
I'm
for
telling
free.
you. Ask and you shall receive. Oh boy. All
Now,
right.
in order to make synchronicities happen,
Uh-huh.
you have to pay attention to them.
All right.
And they come at you in little ways all over the place. And what happens is you'll go, "Whoa, that's wild," or "Look at that. I was just thinking about that," and you kind of let it go. So that basically it comes to you, and then you send it back out into the ether by recognizing it, but not really anchoring it to your reality.
Okay.
If you write down your synchronicities, your things that happen just by chance, I mean, even a parking place where you didn't see one before, or somebody calling that you had been thinking about, all of that stuff. And the more you write them down, the
Mm-hmm.
more you anchor that quality within you into your reality. It's like you're creating a channel. And the more you recognize, the more you write down, the more you say to the universe, I'm paying attention here, the
All right.
bigger and the bigger and the bigger the synchronicities get.
Okay.
So,
And I
you
know a
know,
lot of people sometimes they don't want to get caught up and they'll write it off as though it's my imagination or no, yeah. In other words, they don't see the that something happened that's usually against the odds.
yeah,
That
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
a lot of people
and
fall into that.
it is, and it's sort of like you're creating little hooks that hook that aspect of your reality into the ether, into the universe, into cosmic consciousness, into the source of all creation. And so what you do is you say, I'm ready, keep sending it. Let's see what happens next. And
Right. Like in other words, you expect the good thing to come.
yeah, I know I was talking to the tech, and we were talking about the cool thing about the app is it has the entire guidebook in it.
Really?
Yeah, all except
Wow.
for just a very few things. And so the cool thing is it has all of the definitions and everything there for you. If you want to read it that way, go ahead, or you could you could buy the book. Um, but but um, it got to the point where we were talking, and he said, why don't you record all of the definitions, and we'll put the recording into the app as well. So if people want to hear it, they can listen to it instead of actually reading it. and then we were talking about solfeggio music, and and you know, then something. It was really funny. He went to the intro to my nightlight show, and he said, can we could put the music behind your nightlight? And I said, well, the guy that did the nightlight intro is, way over the hill. I don't even think he's still here. His name was Ken Quiet Hawk. And he looked and looked and looked for Ken Quiet Hawk. He couldn't find him.
Okay.
He's a native storyteller. He's a really phenomenal man. And the next day, I got an email from Ken Quiet Hawk
You're kidding. But and just out of the what? He just like, "Hi, how are you doing?"
out of the blue.
And you're going to I imagine you must have said, "Well, guess what?"
Why? He said, I guess you're not dead. And and the cool thing is he's got CDs out and everything. He's up there, but so am
Okay.
I. And I s- I said to him, are you doing the radio shows anymore with the native storytellers? And his wife had passed away, and he said, well, I've got dementia and I can't remember the stories. And I said, oh, that's such a shame. Do you have MP3s of them? And he said, oh yeah. And I said, well, let's play them on my YouTube channel, and I'll pull you on. We'll talk. You don't have to say anything about the story, but we'll just chat, and then we'll play the story, and then I'll put it up on the YouTube channel. So we're going to bring him back.
That is great. That's fantastic. That's a good thing when you record things.
Oh yeah,
That
oh
you have
yeah.
a way to basically to salvage it. Like, well, unfortunately, in circumstances like what you were just describing, that he's got dementia, that otherwise it would be, you think about it and it's like, it's lost. It would have been lost.
Well, it's really my second husband and I met on my radio show.
Really?
And I was talking about my UFO experience, and somebody had interviewed me for a book about the authenticated sightings, because it was one of the authenticated sightings.
Uh huh.
And this person from the chat room kept emailing me and texting me and saying, I'm famous in the field. I'll give you my credentials. I'd love to talk to you some more and everything. And the author had to leave, so I pulled this guy on, and we had a lovely time talking about UFOs. I didn't know who the hell he was,
Okay.
and he was well, Patrick Cook, and he wrote the Bible UFO Connection, and he's tremendous amount of stuff. And gosh, it was like 8 months later. Um, I flew to San Francisco. He picked me up in his, because I figured he's safe. He's in San Francisco. What can this hurt?
And
7 months later, I flew to San Francisco. He picked me up at the airport with everything he owned in his van, plus his 3 cats and me. And we drove. Our first date was driving across country, and
all right. You know what? I'm going to tell you, people. Do you want to? If you ever really want to know if your relationship is good, do a cross country trip.
with 3 cats.
And with 3 cats to go, it's either great. That's like the litmus test for a
Oh
relationship.
yeah. And 6 months later, we got married.
Okay, yeah,
And then a
if you
year and a
can
half
survive
later,
it.
he died. So it
Oh
was.
my God, I'm sorry, Barbara.
Oh,
That's
it was a very intense relationship. We probably would have killed one another had he lived any longer.
but that's incredible. That is
Yeah.
incredible. Let me ask you. You know what? When you say that thing after you had that sighting with a UFO when you were in the university, did you ever have any other UFO experiences? Or that was it?
No, that was the only one that I've ever had.
Okay.
That kind of made me look inside myself to see what kind of magic I personally had.
Okay.
And when like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was you were invited. I think I was invited to expand on whatever aspects of the spiritual that I had within me. But I did. The author that I told you published my handbook.
Mm-hmm.
I Patrick had a lot of material on UFOs on his website,
Okay.
and when he died, I took everything that was in one of his books. I took off, and whatever was not in his book I put on my website, which was his giant material and his UFO material, because I couldn't keep his website running and mine at the same time.
Okay.
And Ken had seen all of the UFO material that was there, the sightings, and asked if he could use the material. And I said, sure, go for it. And then he called me back and he said, do you want to co author the book with me?
All right. There you go. Yeah.
I said, sure. And he put them in different categories, time wise. And it's before Roswell. And it's sightings that are before Roswell and they go back to 270,000 years ago.
So basically, he was I guess what he was tracking how far back there had been sightings of UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Well, there was a big change after Roswell.
Yeah,
And after Roswell, then conspiracy came in here and all the aliens that want to eat your brains or fatten you up to take you home to eat you for dinner.
like
Uh,
the Twilight Zone episode.
yeah, to be served.
You're right to be
Um,
served. Yes.
and so we went into them and we pulled, relevant ones. And after each section, he would write a little bit and I would write a little bit. And then at the end of the book, he did um, kind of a summation and he did a conclusion and I did the summation.
Okay.
And that got published. And it's actually doing quite well.
Excellent. Let me ask you, what was Patrick? What had he gathered from getting all that information and all these sources that they're here, they're friendly, they're not friendly, they're indifferent, they're hybridizing us. What?
No, I don't think so. Well, he had a photographic memory.
Okay.
So he pulled from the Bible every single instance that recorded either paranormal or UFO or giant material,
Mm-hmm.
and he put it out there. He didn't really ever make a claim as to whether they were aliens or they were whatever. He just and when you stop to think about it, everybody has seen a UFO. It's an unidentified flying object. It could
Right.
turn out to be a seagull or a
Sure. Yeah.
fly,
Yeah.
but you just don't know what it is. It's just unidentified.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as who was in it is a whole nother ball of wax. And he wouldn't make that step. He was just putting out the information that was out there. And Von Donigan, talked to him and it was I met a lot of really cool people through him. And
Okay.
and when he did come, when we did the documentary Secrets of the Stones about the
Mm-hmm.
stone walls and stone chambers that are all over New England, and we
Okay.
presented that at the Megalithomania conference in 2011, and that's still on the internet. That is, it's funny. A lot of authors, when I talk to them about things that I'm interested in,
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 of them have said to me, "There's a couple in New England that did a wonderful documentary that everybody just loves. You should check it out." And it was like, you're
Yeah.
talking about Secrets of the Stones, and yeah, I wrote it and narrated it. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
They actu- so let me ask you something in that theory. What did is it that there's been extraterrestrial contact since Neolithic times? Is that it, or
Oh, from before. I
really?
personally my own personal belief today, and that can change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not carved in stone. It's very flexible. But today, I think that they were here first.
Really?
And that they were underground
Okay.
and they still are.
All right.
So if they meant us harm, they would have done it a
Okay.
long time ago.
Well, you know what? The other day I was listening to this old, oh my God, I wish I could remember this gentleman's name. Anyway, it's like an Art Bell interview from 2015, and this gentleman, his theory on this whole UFO extraterrestrial thing is and apparently oh my God, it'll come to me after we finish, where he's done hypnosis on a lot of abductees. Some of them, which he says are very, very, serious people as far as, and that basically they've extracted genetic material from us, and that there's um, hybrid extraterrestrials walking among us that were chosen. In other words, there's different versions of when they hybridize,
Mhm.
but you have to look like very human. and that basically it's how's this a silent invasion. And I was like, that worries me. I hope that's not true. It's
But
like, what?
but stop and think, is it really an invasion? Because we're living peacefully with
Well,
whoever
no,
is there.
he made it sound like that they have like the top of the king of the mountain of the the head people of the extraterrestrials are these insectoid like extraterrestrials, and that these everything underneath them, including these hybridized uh human ETs,
Mhm.
are their allegiance or their loyalty is to this the head insect. How's that?
Yeah, well,
And it's not like, oh, we're trying to. And I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, in other words, they've been hybridized. In other words, this is how we slip into the, instead of, when you see the movies where they're invading with the, war, like you said, the War of the Worlds kind of deal. No, they're doing it a little bit more subtly. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't
I
know
kind
about that.
of lately
Mm-hmm.
am of the opinion that a lot of the stories, a lot of the things that you're hearing um, have to do with our government, the dark government. That
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the stories about alien races and things like that
Right.
are from our experiments. When you look at World War II, at the horrible experiments they did in the camps,
Yes.
um, I believe that I believe that we have a dark government here, and
Sure.
that at the government that we're seeing now, that we're voting for, um,
Mm-hmm.
is really they're puppets,
I
and
think a lot
they're
of people have woken up and realized, that yeah, that what you think, wow, this is a great theme for a movie. Unfortunately, is closer to reality than we'd like.
yeah.
As far as I don't. I'm sure you're familiar with that show, The X Files,
Oh
and
yeah.
and they made the movie, and at the end of the movie, really it comes around to like after all their adventures was like what you said, that there was this deep dark government plan that was basically utilizing regular people, even though it's not. Well, let's put it this way: it's not good to utilize anybody, good people, but
Hmm.
that the populace at large was being used as guinea pigs.
Well, I'll even take it further in that you look at all the biblical history and all the biblical stories and all,
Mm-hmm.
and if I have to be very very honest, but I mean I can talk to you biblical stuff like crazy, but in my opinion, um, even the Bible, I mean, if you just read the red stuff in the Bible, you're fine. That's great advice. That's spiritual
Mm-hmm.
advice. That's beautiful, beautiful material. If you read the rest of it, it's a whole bunch of old men in dresses trying to create a story that they can manipulate mankind with.
Yeah, I
And
know that.
and when you look at religions, they're corporations. They're
Yes,
not
unfortunately,
serving
yes.
the people. The
Yes,
Catholic
I've
Church
heard.
has enough money to feed the planet, but it's not.
No, no. One time I saw a special where this is BC. This is BC times, and they were looking at all these different cultures and civilizations, and how the priest class were always very powerful.
Mhm.
Whatever the civilization was, whatever the culture, and they had God, I wish I could remember. They had looked at all these temples and all these statues, and they would show how they would manipulate to, like, let's say if it was let's say the statue of a bull, whatever, or that they would put something inside so that it would make it look like smoke was coming out of its nostrils. In other words, it was like a big magic show,
It's a
so that
show.
the populace would be like, "Oh my God, the god, the bull, the whatever it is, whatever statue they had out there is either happy or mad, or the smoke is pouring out." In other words, it was that shock and awe kind of deal.
If you go way back in history, there was no religion. There were the communities had group minds.
Yeah.
They were tuned into one another, and when they died, well, it's like the Milky Way. They thought was the pathway, the soul pathway to going back to wherever the Creator was. But there was no there was no religion. There was no savior. There were no guardian angels
Right.
or Nephilim or Raphaim or any of those. I mean, and when you get right down to it, at the very beginning, we were just love. And at the very beginning, there was no war. And it wasn't until it's kind of like, you know, you you became jealous of one another because of something you had, and that pulled you out of the whole community, and that that's where it all started, because at the very beginning there was just love, and everybody took care of everybody else and nobody
Well, I
starved.
think people, how's this? People mistake that if you get into a fight two individuals, that's a big difference between a war. You see
Oh
what
yeah.
I'm saying? A war, you're talking hundreds and thousands dead. Whereas if you have two individuals, let's go with two men, who slug it out because they want the same girl. Whatever. That's human condition. It happens. That's not the same thing as a war. That's
I
just like,
well,
it's nature in a way.
well, and you look at what's happening today. We're slipping backwards. We're not moving forward. Now there is a part of our society that nobody knows about that is moving forward. That they've done the DNA check, testing, and these ancestry.com,
Mm-hmm.
23andMe.
Yes.
Everybody spit into the tube. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just, isn't that fun? They were looking
Right.
for DNA.
Yes. Of course, I remember it was. I remember when that came, what was it, like 15 years ago or 10 or 12 years ago? I think it was when it started really becoming popular, like for general public kind of
Yeah,
deal. And I remember that all of a sudden, because before they were, how's this? Besides the ancestry, the genealogy, they were giving it out as, oh, if you want to know if you have any health risks. How's that? But
yeah,
then they said, no, 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 we're not going to do that. We're not going to, they stopped doing that. And it was just strictly genealogy. That was all that they wanted, that you could use it for.
yeah.
And I guess because they were like, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, maybe they didn't let you know what your health thing was, but behind the scenes, they sure knew, you know,
Well, stop and
is,
think. They got so much DNA, they were able to create
yeah,
viruses that would kill people off.
yes, exactly. And or how's this target? How's that target?
Yeah,
If
as,
I
as
want this to
sure.
And
And
who's this? Who is this group that you think that is been advancing versus the rest of us that are like, what's
um,
going?
I think they're human beings. I think there
Okay.
are bloodlines that have come
Mm-hmm.
through time,
Yes.
and I think that they are manipulative, and that they are looking at this moment to decrease the population.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you look at the Georgia stones. That one stone was just exploded, but
Yes.
only one of them was hurt, but they destroyed all three.
Well, I think you know what? How's this? I think that much to our what's the word I'm looking for? To our detriment, we tend to disbelief. That it almost sounds like, man, that's like Dr. Evil kind of stuff. We want to like decrease the pop. That's like, oh sure, that's a great James Bond movie from the 60s, and it's like that doesn't mean it's not possible.
I
And
think I think there is a group. I mean, there's the family of 300. There's a group of another. I can't remember what they are. There's a hierarchy,
sure.
and it does go way back, and it's
Well, the
sort
the
of,
the um the other day I was looking at this article. They were talking about King Tut, and they find, how now they're actually being able to do a computer generate a computer of what this based on with a skeleton
yeah,
of what the person, which is great. And they were showing that basically he had like a club foot, and he had all these things, and they were saying that this was a product of because the Egyptians, they would brother and sister would marry,
yeah.
and his father was like, and his mother, they were half siblings. And they were saying that he had all these things wrong with him because of and then you think there's even before there's so much, even among cultures that supposedly had no contact, where they would insist on marrying within their families.
Hmm.
If not brother and sister, the Hawaiians had it, the Egyptians had it. They where I think in more modern times, maybe it was forbidden, like taboo, if you're talking direct incest, but that thing, that cousin thing, like you were saying, there's a lot of families when you
Oh
look
yeah.
at them It's like, especially among the royal families, where
Oh yeah. I
all the
mean,
cousins.
well, Queen Victoria,
Oh yeah, she boy, she did a great.
I
She
mean,
had a bunch of kids.
she had a bunch of kids and she had the rulers of just about every major country there, or
Yes,
the cousins or whatever. It was amazing.
yes,
But
yes, she did.
no, I think that there has been since way back a group of
Or somebody's been telling the higher ups that, you must stay, you must keep the bloodline within here, this family, this.
well, I think too there's stories of the shining ones, and I do think that there's been interdimensional influence here. I don't think any flying saucer we see in the sky. I think it's
Okay.
either ours, or if it is a local extraterrestrial,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a I don't know. It's like a jetney, a shuttle, um,
Okay.
and they're looking at Antarctica again, which is kind of interesting.
Oh,
That
and that's another thing. You thinking, what is up there? Okay, that there's something that all
down there,
everybody's.
down
Oh
there,
yeah, I'm sorry, down there. I'm thinking South Pole.
yeah.
That everybody needs to go down there, and it's very harsh out there. It's
Oh yeah, and there's a lake that there's a no-fly zone over. Why?
yes, yes.
There's a lot of area there that nobody is allowed to go looking at. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the Germans did discover something down there. And whether it's the Germans are there still trying to do their thing, um, or there is a culture or a race down there that we haven't,
Or they started something, they found something, and people have said, well, we won't let it out that
well,
what was
don't forget,
found.
for the longest time, they wouldn't even tell us about the UFOs because they didn't think the general public could handle it.
No, as a matter of fact, when you said Roswell, this gentleman, Mac, the cowboy, the guy that found it out in the ranch, he later on in life, he would never talk about it, but a couple of times he made comments about that the worst mistake that he had done was ever coming forward with what he had found. Because,
Oh,
in other
yeah.
words, you think, well, what was he? Was he told, shut up? We're going to do something to you or your family. Other people say that there was actual bodies, but in other words, this guy thought he was doing a good thing by coming forward with the material, whatever it was that he found out there.
Mhm.
Mac Brazel. And from what I understand, it was like, that's the worst thing I could ever have done. If I had to
Yeah,
do it over again, I would never come forward with what I had found out there on that ranch.
yeah. No, it did.
And
It changed the direction of everything.
yes,
And,
yes,
are there extraterrestrials? In other words, people not born on this planet here? Probably. But if there are, they're interdimensional. They're not
yes.
coming in ships.
Right, yeah, like that light year travel kind of deal that we got. That yeah, that by the time yeah, by the time they left wherever they're coming from, we burned out and we're gone. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
inter or intra dimensional travel.
the
How
money that we're spending on space travel when it's ridiculous.
from what I understand, and I'm not really that. From what I understand, they say that all these things that they're saying, talking about the moon and the Mars, and they're saying just the radiation alone from the Van Allen belt, okay, is like there's more of a challenge than just the distance.
Oh yeah. And talking about colonizing Mars, give me a break. I mean, take care of the planet we're on.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna go to this planet that all we've got is little scoops of dirt from a robot. That's it, and some photographs that sometimes can be interpreted a million ways. And
No.
I don't know. There's something, and now lately, I don't know if you've seen a bunch of these different countries have land these unmanned uh, robots or capsules on the
Yeah.
moon. You know, and there was one. Was it I want to say it was the Japanese, where since it depended on solar light when it went dark, when the moon rotated, they couldn't work it, and I was like, all right, did somebody think this part out or what? What happened? It had to spend like 2 weeks non-operational because without solar until it turned around and it got was like, okay, you spent all this money to actually get it to land, because that's another thing, to get it to actually land.
And what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, you got people here on the earth plane who are homeless, who are hungry, who
Yes.
are, I
Yes.
mean, and we have space. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure we have space anymore here in this country, but um,
No. We
you
always
spread
we
it out. We've got, it's a big world.
well, I how's this? But it's very well. It always comes down also, Barbara, to money. You know, like you said, they're spending millions and millions or trillions of dollars, billions, whatever, of dollars in all these programs. And over here, all they need to is organize so that people got up. Let's put the people that are really, really, really crazy. You know what I'm saying? The ones that really have very bad mental illness.
Yeah.
We need to separate those from maybe somebody that's just got an addiction problem versus somebody that's just really
Well,
homeless.
and let's get them the medication they need. I
Sure,
swear to
yes.
you, they have a cancer cure.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but of course, that you know how much money would be lost on that if they actually cured it versus treating it. That
Yeah.
would be.
But again,
And
that's corporations. That's,
oh yeah,
we've taken our religion out of a church and we've put it into corporations. Now the churches
yes,
are now corporations, but big
yes,
pharma and some of the other large corporations. And are we enslaved? Yes, we are.
yes, we are.
Everyone here on this planet who has a
Yes,
credit card is enslaved to
sure.
that credit card.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I tell everybody, I'm gonna let me go on that. You even go to all these stores that give you all these loyalty points. Guess what they're trying to do? They're trying to track your buying habits in case you just pay with cash. Because
yeah.
when you pay with your debit card or credit card, basically they could still track, you know, because
Yeah.
they store that information. But if you happen to pay with cash and you don't use your loyalty points, just about every store I think now offers some type of, you
Oh yeah.
know, like we're gonna give you a discount, or and everybody's like, oh, that's so neat. It's like, no, what they're doing is they want to keep track of what you're spending your money on. They're scraping information.
Well, they want
Is
to
what they're
make
doing.
money go away and make it all digital.
Oh, you could do a whole nother show on that, as far as I'm concerned. And it's like, nope, nope. And I, they've made it. I don't know. I think I might not be the only person. To me, it hurts me more when I pay cash versus just debiting. They hit the card. It's almost like
Yeah,
makes
it's
it
real easy.
less. It's easy. It's easy. It's convenient. It's like,
But then you get to the point where I don't have a lot of money. So I don't have to worry about the stock market because I'm not in it.
no, I'm not in the stock
And
market.
but the reality here is that those people who have money have worse problems emotionally than those of us that don't,
Yeah.
because they're always worried about losing it.
Sure, sure. And you know
So
what? It makes me feel bad for the people, because now let's face it, not that many employers now offer 401ks, but there's a whole
no,
generation of the boomers and everything who had the benefit of employers who did offer some type of 401k or retirement, and they're now shaking in their shoes like, hey, what's going to happen with my money or what my investment or my whatever, as I get older and older. But yeah, I totally agree with you
no,
as
it's,
far as
it's somebody said, well, if you win $1 million, I said, I hope I don't, because my first fear is going to be, oh my God, I'm going to lose it somehow, or
well,
something's going to crash and I'm going to lose it. And the reality is, if you've won the money, you didn't earn it, so it's really not yours.
you know what? You'll probably find a lot of family members you never knew you had.
That's a possibility too.
You know?
I mean,
All of a sudden, you'll be like, "You're who?
at least the
Who
one
are
in the
you?"
backyard isn't going to come after me.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But yeah, that's one of the things that happens, where it's like, yeah, and unfortunately, and this is the thing, Barbara, unless you've been alive an X amount of years, you've missed the whole transition.
Oh yeah.
Like I tell everybody, once upon a time, there was just one one telephone in the house. I remember when my mom got a second telephone on her nightstand. In other words, no answering machines, none of this.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah.
and people mailed you stuff and called you, and if nobody answered, they'd call you later or the next day or something.
I
And
I
then
remember I've got to be older than you because I can remember party lines.
No, I no, yeah, no, no. By the time it was, we had just that one phone number. But I know what you're talking about. I've heard that those party lines were. So I was thinking, man, people could overhear your
Oh yeah,
conversations.
no, it was so cool. You could sit if you were really quiet and listen to somebody spilling their guts out to somebody
I mean,
else.
you must have get in on a great gossip. It's like
Absolutely.
it's like shut up. No, no, no. I've got to tell you this. Like, no, you don't. But yeah,
You're
if you
telling the
haven't been,
neighborhood.
and this is the thing, now, and I'm not. Here it is. Here's mine. You know,
Yep.
but you know what? Well, I didn't have that. I never felt deprived. I never felt like I was losing out on life because a lot of people look at it. Don't get me wrong. I can see we're in an emergency. You're thinking, God, this is great. I'm glad that we have something like this. But outside of that,
My s-
people were not on instant demand. Like, hey, why didn't you pick up the phone? I just called you because I couldn't or I
well,
didn't want to.
I have a sister,
Uh huh.
and she has a smartphone,
Mm-hmm.
but she only turns it on if she wants to make a call.
There you go.
And I said to her, "You're 77 years old. You're living alone. Keep the damn thing on just in case you
Right.
fall. You need to call for help."
Yeah.
And she won't do it. And I go for walks. I don't want to be bothered. I said, I understand you don't want to be bothered. What if you trip and fall?
Yeah.
You're going to want to bother somebody
Sure.
or be
That's
food
a
for the animals.
yeah. Or like, hey, I haven't heard from her for a few days. It's like,
Yes,
that. Unfortunately, yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's
No,
what.
no. It has. There's absolutely. I want to say, especially for people that don't have people around them
Hmm.
to check on them. I absolutely see the benefit of a phone.
Oh yeah,
I'm not one of these
absolutely.
anti-technology people, but it's a
Well,
mixed bag.
that's why I did the app for the deck of cards for the phone. There's a whole generation out there that won't
Mm-hmm.
pick up a book anymore. I mean,
Oh
I
no.
read a book a week for the radio show.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, no, I've
And
always been a reader all my life.
so, oh, me too. But this is, I really heavy. Actually, the book we're doing now, we're doing in 7 different sections because it's over 1,000 pages.
What book are you doing?
It's Gary Wayne's Genesis 6 Conspiracy
Oh, I have not
Part
heard of that.
2. Oh,
No, I haven't.
it's a great book if you want to get into the Bible stuff.
What?
His
Sure.
his
What's the theme of it, or what's?
he goes into the true story of the Genesis 6 conspiracy. He goes into um oh gosh, the War of the Giants and why the giants were
Mm-hmm.
created, and who sired who and why, and what was the covenant land, and why did the Jews have to travel back and forth and everything. It's all biblical stuff.
So, in
His
other words,
first
it gives a different perspective on all this Old
it
Testament
goes
stuff.
in it goes in so deep, it's unbelievable. It's really quite fascinating.
Okay, that
And
sounds very
the
interesting.
first book is, to me, this one is going into, I mean, it's great knowledge to have. I don't know where I'll use it, but it's great knowledge to have about all of the
Mm-hmm.
different giant tribes and why they were created, and how they were created, and it's well researched. It's not somebody's flight of fancy for sure. The
Well,
first
this is what you
Genesis.
hear that certain how can I tell, skeletons or remains that they have found that they've been destroyed purposely.
Oh yeah, well those are the ones that were found in this country that the Smithsonian destroyed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, they collected as many as they could. They put them on a barge and took them out into the Atlantic and dumped them.
Yeah, that wouldn't go very well. Do you think then there's anything to the idea of Tartaria, which basically part of the idea of is that the inhabitants of Tartaria were giants or bigger than us, much bigger
You
than
mean
us. That
Pangaea
no,
when
not
it was all.
Pangea, Tartaria. That basically this is the area covered by like Russia, part of the Mongolian Empire,
Mhm.
and basically it explains why some of these really older. Let me tell you, it gets deep. You have to look at it and go, why such the doorways were much higher, much
Yeah.
taller. How's this? And windows, and also there's certain illustrations that you find in some old books where it shows Tartarians next to a regular human being,
Hmm.
and they're much, much taller.
Oh, sure. And well, look at the Egyptian, some of their statues that are so huge. They
Mm-hmm.
were lifelike. They were, you know, the Egyptians were right in there with some of the giant wars. So that yes, absolutely, there were giants there, and they easily could have migrated north. Um, According to the Bible, they were trying to wipe out the giants, but they never did it. So,
Okay.
and as a
Right.
matter of fact, when the guy who's in charge of, I don't know if it's North or South Korea, I can't remember which, he took over from his father who died, and they
Mm-hmm.
had all of the army lined up, and it was all these men just in a great big line, and suddenly there's this one huge man, and then there's all of these little ones, and
Right.
they're
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
they're still
Uh-huh.
around. Actually, they in the Bible anyhow, they had double rows of teeth, they had extra digits on their hands and feet, they had usually red hair and fair skin,
Mm-hmm.
and, um, the bones that have been found of giants, in this country had the double rows of teeth and the 6
Really?
and not only that, but I had for a while, somebody who was a co-host on my show with me, she helped me out, and in her family, it was a given that babies were born with six fingers and 6 toes and double rows
Really?
of teeth and red hair.
That reminds me. Well, Anne Boleyn didn't have red hair, but she was said to have had one hand with a six finger and a six toe on one of her feet.
Oh, wow. So
Yep.
so genetically, it's
Mm-hmm.
come down through
Sure.
time. It's only come down through about 2, 3,000 years. So it's we all have a little bit of it, but there is that part that, will genetically become active in certain family trees and stuff like that. And,
Yes.
she said, yeah, everybody had the extra toes and extra fingers removed, and they had to have the extra rows of teeth pulled out, and,
Mm-hmm. I
but
can see, and that's one of those things that everybody in the family knows about.
oh
It's
yeah,
like, of course. Yeah, and like getting back to what you were talking about, when they now that they offered all this DNA, find out what's your pie or whatever it is. Yeah, like what is this information is being used for? Is it to find who's
I
who or
think, yeah, I think they're looking for certain genetic traits in
yes,
people.
of course, of
And of
course.
course, Rh negative, they don't know where it came from.
Oh no, they can't. They do not know what Rh negative is. They do not know. They can't
So
understand it.
they may be looking for those people. I know they're using it for medical research. They're
Sure.
definitely looking to isolate certain strands of DNA to
Yes.
create their perfect person, maybe. I don't know.
Or and you
But we're
think
all
of it.
volunteering, it's almost,
Well, yeah, we're volunteering without without not realizing what comes with it,
yeah,
and
I had a boyfriend once who told me, be very careful with what you do because, if you become too well known, there's going to be a, a white table ready for you to dissect you when you
oh
croak
my
to find
god,
out how you can do what you're doing.
oh my god, it's like yeah, we need. You know what? That's really funny because back in the 1800s, when all these people would do these horrific crimes, they would take their brains to study them just to see if they could find something in their brain that was different. So that's not, as far as like, well, we'll look at the brain and we'll figure it out that way.
Well, they had Einstein's brain, and they couldn't find anything unique about it except, the folds, the crevices that,
Mm-hmm.
they were deeper than most, but that's the only difference in his brain.
Right. Right. They're always trying to figure out didn't they lose it? I want to say, didn't I had heard something that
Yeah,
they
it's
did
it,
lose Einstein's brain or something like that.
yeah, it's in somebody's library or used as a
Probably it's in
doorstop
somebody by
someplace.
private collection,
Yeah.
all of a sudden. Somebody dies unexpectedly, and when the family goes in there, they'll go, hey, look what we found. Einstein's brain, whatever. But yeah, it's not as far fetched. There's a lot of things. I think artifacts and even stuff that's stolen that are in private collectors' hands, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
always get somebody on the black, to do transactions, whether it's buy or sell, and none of us, normies ever know any better about stuff. Even I want to say even probably works of art, that they have found works of art behind other ones.
Oh
or
yeah.
they've said, oh, we've lost these works of art from so and so, and it's like, not really. They've been lost from public view, but they're sitting in somebody's vault or somewhere.
Well, I think the Catholic Church has a lot of stuff
Oh,
hidden
sure.
in their archives.
Oh yeah, for sure. In their
Wouldn't
museums and
surprise
everything.
me if they had the Ark of the Covenant there.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Or anything, any artifact that, even I want to say, maybe even stuff that they themselves spur on as being mythic. Oh, that story. That's not them as the Catholic Church, but how you could put stories out through
Well,
different.
it's how history has kept alive history.
Hmm.
Quite often, it's fairy tales actually
Yes.
come from actual history.
Yes. And
So, it's teaching a lesson, or, it's fairy stories or stories that have come through time either teach a concept, or they are a part of history that has to be remembered. So it's been woven into a
oral
fairy tale.
tradition. Oral
Yeah.
tradition. Well, because there was a time that, I mean, not everybody was literate, as in being able, well, they didn't have the materials or the writing
Yeah.
capacity. So oral tradition was how they would pass along these stories.
Well,
And
look at the Grimm fairy tales. Now, if you've ever read the actual Grimm, they're
man, they're like
grim.
dark. They're very dark.
They're so dark, it's unbelievable. Thank God
Yes.
for Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 I mean, when you look at it, you're like thinking, these were for children. What?
yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't know if this is such a good idea, but they were, and I think also back then, I don't know how to say, feel about this, but when you were always, for a child, it was like a cautionary tale. There
Yeah.
was I'm not gonna just give you a story to put you to sleep. It was like, I'm gonna give you a story to protect you, as a cautionary tale, and hopefully it'll scare you, so
It's
you don't
true.
do that.
It's true.
Yes, it was a more, I want to say, people were more realistic with your children. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't believe in exposing children before they're old enough to understand certain things, but sensibilities have changed. How's that?
Oh yeah. I know when my son was very young, maybe 4, somebody had passed away, and I was, gonna take him to the funeral home with me, but not walk him up to the casket or anything like that.
Right.
Just have him for the experience. And as was usual with him, I suddenly lost track of him. And he came running up to me and he said, "Hey, do you know there are 5 dead people down here? Come see." And it was like, okay, he's not going to be traumatized by that.
Oh yes, and yeah, you're all worried, like, oh, I'll just make sure that I know kids. I'm telling you, kids are wonderful. When
He
here you're
was,
all worried, like, oh my God, I'm
oh,
going to expose my kid to, like, maybe he's not ready to see a dead person, and he's all good with it.
oh yeah. Well, when in the 50s, early 50s, um, my mother and sister and I flew to Michigan, and she had
Hmm.
never been on a plane, and neither had we. And she was very nervous that she'd have to drag us up the things to get into the plane, and when she turned around, my sister and I were at the top of the stairs already saying, "Come on, come on." And then when we got inside, she didn't want us to walk around. She was afraid we would throw the balance of the plane off if we went to the other side of the plane. So um yeah, new
Yeah.
things are definitely, um,
Well,
kids are wonderful. Kids are amazing.
yes,
To
they're very
traumatize a kid
flexible.
is a hard thing to do.
No, no. Usually, if kids feel like, if things get really bad, I have somebody to run to.
Yeah,
Outside of that, they're good. They do their own
absolutely.
thing. Yeah, yeah. It's the only time I remember when Jurassic Park first came out, the first
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I took my kids to the theater, and they wanted to. My youngest was like 6 or 7, and they were all together. Mom, we're gonna sit a couple of. This place was packed. We're gonna sit a couple of rows in front. I said, "You sure?" Oh yeah, but I'm thinking, okay, this not this. When that part comes with that T-Rex is
Yeah, oh, yeah.
eating the guy on the bathroom on the toilet. All of a sudden, I look, and here's my youngest. Mom, can I sit on your lap? And I'm like, sure. It got a little bit too real for him. And I say, but it's like, as long as they got somebody, like, yeah, I need somebody just in case. But outside of that, children usually are are
Oh,
pretty flexible. But yeah, that's another thing, as far as even now with kids,
oh,
what we're
it's
getting them
so,
used to as far as when they become adults, like, how can I say, self-sufficiency. I think we need to get our kids to be more self-sufficient.
well, when I was young, and in the summertime, my mother would always say to us, "Come home when the street lights go on."
Yeah.
And that was it. We were just out there roaming.
Yeah.
And today, holy moly,
No,
my
I personally, yeah, it was like, I remember when my boys were like 10, 11, 12, something like that. And I was like in a big enclosed neighborhood. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't, but they had other boys and they'd be running around and
yeah,
they'd, like, oh, they one time my son, he slashed his head because he was going through a fence. But outside of that, I would tell him, hey, every 2, 3 hours, check in with me. Just make sure guys need water. But the rest of the
yeah.
time, they spent it running around, you know, getting
And to
skin knees, and like
and
you said, they'd
yeah,
be like, all right, time to come in. But yeah, but
and what, we drank out of the hoses and
oh
didn't
yes,
die?
yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly. And now you tell, and it's like, but what's wrong? It's like nothing's wrong with it.
yeah, no, it's,
People,
and of course, this is their normal,
yes,
and that's
unfortunately, it
one of the
is.
reasons I did the app. There's a whole generation out there that isn't gonna read. It'll
Yes,
put something on
unfortunately.
their app, on their phone, and they'll play with it there, but God forbid they actually sit down and read a book.
You know what's really the funny thing about this, that a lot of people, let's go down conspiracy lane a minute, Barbara. you know, as you know, a lot of these books now, they do what on the Audible app or
Yeah,
Narration and stuff like that, or the Kindle or some version of it, which is basically an internet thing. And if people
yeah.
don't realize, do you know that those versions can be altered or withdrawn? People don't realize. Hello. Whereas when it's your book,
Yeah.
it's your book. Like in this one that's out of print, that's falling apart. That's out of print. Nobody can take it away from me. Nobody can alter the contents, or nobody can withdraw it for some unforeseen reason, because nowadays that could happen. We're going to withdraw this from the market because we don't want anybody to be able to whatever. There's a story, a passage. It's like people don't
Mhm.
realize. And the reason why I say this, I've always been like a book person. Like, what was that? A million books.
Oh, yeah. Books a
And
million. Yeah.
right. Yeah. And then, and then I'm thinking, I never thought of it that way. But lately, sometimes I have had to go down that road where, wow, what happened if I really wanted a certain book,
Mhm.
especially if it's something that maybe if it's not out of print or something, and it's been revised, or it's just been totally like, we're not printing that anymore and nobody can have it.
Ah, have you
And
gone
then,
to ABE Books?
no. No, to eight
ABE.
books? Yeah. Eight books. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, no, no. I'm talking about, you know, because let's face it, even when a book goes out of print, copies get scarcer and scarcer, and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
lucky if you don't find it on the internet. Maybe you could find it maybe at a Goodwill or something like that. But what I'm saying is that eventually they go
Steal it from
extinct.
a library.
Oh God. Oops. What? Are you one of Yeah, I know the I don't, yeah, did I ever do that? No. Let me tell you something. I tell everybody, when I was a kid, the big library was named for John F. Kennedy. It was just John F. Kennedy Library. It was a big library. And I remember, as soon as I was able to read, they would give you a 10-book limit every time you took out books. And that's what I was doing. And it was, you better believe those books were coming back because I wanted to get more.
Oh, yeah.
And but I think most libraries, unfortunately, now what they're doing is they have you can, with your library card, there's something called Hoopla, Hoopla digital.
Mhm.
And what you can do is you can go in there and basically withdraw either the movies or digitized versions of any book if you want to read them that way. In other words, this is meant for, like, if you don't have the money,
Yeah.
either for the Kindle or to buy it through Amazon or anywhere. I think, I want to say it's 2 weeks that they give you for each withdrawal, but you have a way of, but how can I say, the actual idea of libraries the way they were, that you would go and get a book.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
No,
yeah,
it's
no,
sad. It really is. And they just kids aren't reading anymore. And oh my gosh, the joy that I get from reading
yeah,
and what I've learned
sure,
is phenomenal. I mean, everything that I talk about, that I write about, that I know about, none of it came from school. It all came
yes,
from my finding
yes,
out myself. And
sure,
this is worth it. I'm going to save this, and this is worth it. I'm going to,
yes,
remember this, or I'm going to put a note someplace. And
right. And
you
I
know,
think
it,
that well, usually as a child, but especially if you develop it as a child. I mean, besides the grammar and the vocabulary, I think that it does something for your imagination.
oh yeah,
Yes, when you see the movie, yeah, that's great, but the imagination part is done for you.
oh yeah, yeah.
Whereas
No,
when you're reading, yeah.
there's something about it. You escape. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. Yes.
there. I mean, I read a book a week, but I also slide in other books that are just a fun read.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to balance it out, because the fun reads just are, if I'm reading a book because I'm going to talk to an author and interview them, I had best know the material. And
Exactly.
and I 15 years now I've been doing the interview shows, and I have never done a cold interview.
At
So
least you
that
know that what their work is, what their material is.
yeah, and I only had one interview from hell. And
What was
and
that?
well, since then I have a guest form and they have to give me talking points.
Okay.
Um, Prior to that, I just was sure that everybody was as gregarious as I was, and so it would be fascinating. And so,
Uh-huh.
so I had this one author. I had not spoken to him before the show, and I don't think he had even made the appointment. As one of his agents that had, said yes, you'll be there. And
Okay.
so I did a wonderful introduction to him, and I welcomed him to the show, and he said, "Thank you." And I said, went into I enjoyed your book very much. There were a lot of points that I thought were, really quite fascinating. And I gave him a leading question that would hopefully let him babble for a little while. And he said, uh huh. And then I asked him another question, and he said, huh. And I found that after half an hour that I had to give him the answer and say, "Is that appropriate?" And he would say, "Uh-huh." That's all he said to me for 2 straight hours.
That must have been a long 2 hours.
Oh, it was horrifying. And so now my rule is you have to talk to me for about 5 or 10 minutes a day or so before the show, or I will not
No
have
more.
you on.
That's hilarious.
I have to know you can talk.
And it's really funny because you would think that a writer would have that ability, especially about their own material, about their own book.
Oh, yeah. But no, he and the book was a beautiful book, but he wrote, but he could not talk. So
Maybe he
and
has
I'm
had
easy to talk
Asperger's.
to. So, it's not like, I'm a cold, unwarm person. I genuinely wanna make you look great.
But you know what's really funny is most people that are in the silent, when you talk about their thing, their
Mhm.
book, their interest, their me, they're like, boop, 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 boop. They'll talk up a
Sure.
storm because we're talking my language. So
Well,
that
Mark
guy,
Mark Eddy, a guy who does he co-hosts. He does a show on Nightlight as well.
hmm,
He had somebody on that had written about a past life experience, and he
okay,
was trying to talk to her about her book, and she didn't want to talk about it. And no, I don't want to talk about that now. And no, I'd rather
oh,
not talk about that. And I could see him starting to sweat. And I was laughing because he hadn't gotten a guest form. He didn't have talking points. He'd read her
hmm,
book, but
okay.
apparently she had not. So
Oh, you're
and we
kidding. So she didn't want to discuss. That's very unusual.
well,
That's
we
weird.
think a ghostwriter wrote it.
Okay, thank you. You just took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That sounds to me like somebody who doesn't want to get caught. Like, I don't know. I know less about this book than you do.
Yep. It was very
Uh
interesting.
huh.
I was sitting here because I wasn't a part of the show. I just do the techie stuff when he has a show. And so I was sitting here giggling and I'm thinking, he didn't get a guest form.
Yeah, there you go. That's very interesting. But yeah, Barbara, for my podcast listeners, what is the website that they can find you at?
I'm at barbaradelong.com
Okay. And
and my all of my information is there. The YouTube
uh-huh.
channel, the link to the YouTube channel is there. The link to the Cosmic Deck of Initiation is there.
Okay.
Um, Secrets of the Stones is there. The Giants are there. UFO, everything's there.
So in other words, if they go to that one website, let me see if I can bring it in. Let's see. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. And this is your website here.
That's me.
Okay. And from there they can jump off and find you whatever it might be.
Yep,
Okay.
it's all
Excellent.
there. When I was doing the website, I said to the woman who was putting it together, I said, I'm noticing nobody is hitting any of the drop down menus.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just make the drop down menus buttons on the front page? And
Okay.
she said nobody does that. And I said, is it against the law? And she said, no. And I said, then either you do it or I find somebody who will. She said, I'll do it. I'll do it. And as a result, there have been a number of people that have actually copied it.
I bet. No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean as far as because on my own website that they have the drop. Some people don't realize that there's a drop down menu that when you hover over that link is when
Yeah.
it drops down versus what you've got there.
And
Yes.
so you hit one of these buttons and the drop
Mm-hmm.
down menu of that category is all there on the right hand side. It's all there. But
Yes.
main categories are right there.
So that they can find you no matter what. As far as yeah, yeah, I see what you mean. You've got everything about your, oh, this is fantastic. Okay, but I'm going to put a link with the website in the credits of the show for anybody that wants to use that.
Fantastic.
But again, thank you so much. Are you working on anything else? Books?
Uh,
Anything? More
yeah,
cards?
there are a couple of books in the go. Right now, every month I do a prediction for that month, and then I do a prediction for the year as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're out there, and I have a Barbara Circle or Join My Circle, and if you join the circle,
Okay.
at the top of the website, you'll get the notice when the predictions for the every month come out, and they're really cool. And
Okay.
I've been having a lot of fun with them.
I believe it. Wow, this is great. Barbara, thank you so much. It has been absolutely wonderful, and I mean wonderful to speak to you. I really enjoyed this.
Was the
You're
Are
so
you gonna
interesting.
are you gonna send me a link to this?
Absolutely, I will.
Okay,
I'm going to send you the link to the video and to the podcast version, to both versions.
okay, because on my page for Nightlight Radio, I thought
Mm-hmm.
it would be lots of fun to put all of the shows that I've actually been on,
Sure, yes.
so people can make fun of my hair color and my hairstyle and everything. And
Okay, oh my God, you're on Blog Talk. Oh my God, I have not been on Blog Talk Radio in such a long time, but that's great. They've been around for a very long time.
well, at least 15 years.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, they have.
so I have a list of all of the shows I've been
Yeah.
a guest on
Mm-hmm.
that are there as well. And with Blog Talk, I think I've done 11 or 1200 shows. And
Wow.
when and I have intentionally left the first shows there, which were horrible.
Isn't that
And
great when you hear some of those first show that you go, ooh.
I've left them there because when people want to start out, I said, okay, go and listen to my first couple of shows. You will not believe how bad they are.
Yeah.
But with time,
Yes. You learn. You
it
learn.
gets better.
Of course you do. That's the whole idea. Again, thank you so much, Barbara. You've been wonderful.
Been my pleasure. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye bye now.
Okay, this is my grandson. Hold on a minute. I'm gonna
Okay.
hold on. Let me let's see. Gio, is this an emergency? Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I am doing my show. Okay, is everything okay? You need it? I'll get it to you. Okay. I will. Okay, I will. All right, sweetheart. Let me let you go. Bye. See, such is life. You go from your kids to your grandkids. That's my oldest grandson who lives on a cottage I have on my property, way on the other side. But as you could tell, see, the thing is, even though I have it on silent, I have an emergency bypass for him and other of my family members, like my kids, which means that even if I have it on silent, I will hear it. But did you hear? He goes, I realized. And it's like, that's why I took it, because I'm thinking if he's calling me, something going on. Because he went to see a friend of his who recently had a baby, and I think they came home or something. So I'm thinking, I better take this call. But like always, see? And then my dog barks. Never a dull moment. But anyway, I hope you really like this interview with Barbara DeLong. Like I said, I'm going to have her link on the website's on the show's credits, but it's Barbara DeLong, DeLong.com. Very simple. And sure enough, she's got all her links there. She's got everything there. And I think this is wonderful, because this is somebody who's I love her sense of humor, man. That talk about being around the block and then some. But that's great, because you have perspective on things. And I love her stories about synchronicity, and how she pointed out that a lot of times things happen or come to us, information, phone calls, even conversations, that maybe sometimes in the future you say, wow, that was coincidental. But the moment that it's happening, you don't act on it. You don't say, hey, you know what? Oh, my glasses are like they're really, really, I gotta, I ran and I didn't, what can I say? Talk about last minute things. Anyway, that people don't pay attention to the coincidence when it happens. In other words, I'm not talking about everything, but that you yourself recognize, well, what are the odds of this actually happening this way on this timing? Not in and of itself what actually happened, the timing, because really that's what synchronicity is. It's timing. It's timing. You get that phone call, you get that letter or that email or the something. I've heard of people like they've been looking into something, boop, they find the book, or they go to lunch with a friend and that person brings along another person that happens to be the person that tells them XYZ, fills in the blank for something. Sometimes I've even heard of job offers coming this way. And people don't, like what she said, don't notice it sufficiently. And I understand exactly what she means. You expect good things and good things come to you. All right. And this is not like, oh, that's wishful thinking, Marlene. What is that? No. I'm talking that when you expect good things, it's almost like that, that like that theory of like attracts like. And I've even spoken about it as far as paranormal investigations, where sometimes you will have, and I've had cases like this, where people have experienced sometimes really weird or kind of abrupt kind of hauntings or paranormal events. And, like after you get to know it, that's like you almost have like an angry spirit or a person that was there that was an angry person in life. And then all of a sudden some member in that family or the one person, whatever, is kind of like an angry person. It's like a like attract likes, and it activates the disturbances. It activates it's almost like, hey, you're one of my kind. Or, hey, when you sit there and maybe, there's people that bitch and complain all by themselves just because this is just the way they are. Or they always see the downside to stuff, or like, what is it, that glass half empty? And they just rail because against whatever. And if there's something there, somebody there that maybe is dormant or all of a sudden says, hey, hey, wow, you're like, I love it. All that negative energy you're putting out, that's great. Getting back to the original point, that energy that we put of expectation of good things is basically sometimes what aligns it to us so that you do get. And I'm not going to say, oh, well, the next day I went and I played the lotto and I won. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where you expect good things and good things happen. And sometimes you don't even have to be, specifically like, again, like I won the lotto or, it's almost like this open-ended expectation of good things that sometimes good things come to you. How's this? That are maybe that you didn't expect, number one, or number two, that you thought, well, I would really like to get this, whatever, fill in the blank, whatever. I don't know. Either a thing or a and then what actually happens is much better than what you were thinking you wanted or going to get. Like it's like in other words, that's why that open-ended part, comes into play, where you just don't overthink it. You just expect good things to happen, whatever form they come to you. And when they do, you note it, like she said, or you write it down. And then, you know what? You develop the reputation for being a lucky person. Man, you got the best luck. All these great things happen for you. What's the secret? You're so lucky. You got a rabbit's foot? What is it? And it's like, no, I expect good things. Oh, come on. Oh, yeah. It's that simple. But this, I'm not saying you live a charmed life. And I'm gonna give you an example. There was one time when I was doing other work where I used to have cases, and basically I was on the streets. I went into an office setting maybe at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and sometimes not even then. But most of the time, I spent it riding around in a car. And there was a lot of times where I was going into really, not all the time, but risky neighborhoods. All right. And I remember one time I got up and the battery on my car was dead, like deader than dead. It wasn't like, it wasn't, and I was like, oh my God. And it was like a Monday. I was like, oh, I was mad. And luckily the AAA had this service where they would come and bring you a battery. They sold it to you. So I got the new battery put in. And then I started thinking about it. I said, Marlene, you're looking at this all wrong. If there was any place, okay, the best place for you to have your battery go dead on you, as in it's not going to take a charge kind of thing, this is the best place. Your house, the driveway of your house. Because I thought, you know what? If I would have been out somewhere at whatever, sometimes I was out there at 11 o'clock at night, 2 a.m, whatever. You come out and your battery doesn't turn on. It was like, talk about an inopportune moment, like the worst place, the worst time. So, and I guess my point is that even though it was inconvenient and I had to spend the money on getting a new battery and a whole, everything got set behind for hours, because by the time I got somebody out there, at the end of the day, it was the best thing because I would have needed it. It's inevitable. Your batteries have to be replaced on cars. That's a given. But of all the times that it had to go south on me, it happened at the best possible moment. So that's why I'm saying even the bad things sometimes happened at the good timing, at the best timing for you. All right. And there was another time, not too long after that. Yeah, it was a while. Same thing. I come out and I think it was a back tire that was low. I could tell it was like flat. It was like, I can't even ride this to get it, put air in it kind of deal. Same thing. It was like, Marlene, before you go off, can you imagine you would have left wherever you were at and you come out and you have that tire? Some of these places, you know what? I'd shut up. And I got AAA to go out there and inflate it for me. Like it was a small leak. And from there I drove it and I got the plug, I got the leak fixed. Because I learned my lesson from that battery situation, which was things happen. People get flat tire. It happens. All right. It's not the universe picking on you. It happens. But it's almost like we're going to help you that when it does happen, it's in the best terms. Getting back to the original point, which is when you expect good things. So there you go. There's my version of it. So please check out Barbara's website. She's got a lot of interesting stuff on there. 15 years worth of shows. That's fantastic. And again, sign up for my newsletter on Substack. Go to mppellicer.com, miamigoschronicles.com, etc., etc., etc. And like I said, I have all the information there about links to everything, old podcasts, new shows, books, articles, you name it, it's on there. And again, I've got a lot of great guests coming on. So please come back and spend some more time with me. And thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you. Take care.